I ate up for finding it unfair that my dad told me that I had to pay rent or move out at 18 but didn't tell my brothers the same thing at 18. I, 17M, made this account because I think my dad is being unfair despite everyone I asked telling me he's not. I talked to my family about it for support and they were unsupportive and actually called me ungrateful. I turned the 18th of April 21 stone and my dad told me that he wants me to start paying rent after I turn 18 or I'll have to move out. This made me upset because both of my brothers weren't forced to move out or had to pay rent when they turned 18. My oldest brother, 25M, only moved out 2 years ago and my other brother, 22M, still lives with us. I told him this and he told me that he knows and he made a mistake when raising them and he wasn't going to make the same one with me. I asked my dad if he was saying this to my brother, 22M, and he told me that he wasn't because he was unemployed and if he were to kick him out he'll be homeless. I asked my dad why he cares about him not being homeless but is ready to make me homeless. He told me that he'll help me find an apartment and will co-sign the lease if I choose to move out. I asked my dad why he wouldn't just do this for my brother instead, but he told me that he doesn't trust him, which just pissed me off more. I feel like I'm getting punished for being well-behaved. I explained this to my dad and told him that if he would have parented better, he wouldn't have to force all his regrets on me. My dad got upset with me and told me that I was being unfair and that I know how hard he tried to raise all of us and I can't fault him for everything when he tried his best. I tried to call my family to try and have them convince my dad that he was the one being unfair, but they told me that I should be grateful my dad cares about me and that they agree with him. They told me his only fault is letting 22M and 25M stay as long as they did and they are glad he wasn't going to enable me. I did nothing wrong. I genuinely feel like I'm getting punished for my brother's actions and I don't find that fair at all. Welcome to our Am I the Asshole? Please view our voting guide here. https://www.reddit.com/r/amethysthole/wiki/fact#wiki_what.2019s_with_3if_mean.3if and remember to use **, only one ** judgment in your comment. Op has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the asshole. Greater than my dad told me that after I turn 18, he wants me to either move out or start paying rent despite him not doing this for my brothers. He insists he's doing this for me, but I do. And see how? I feel like I'm being treated unfairly. Everyone I've talked to agrees with my dad, which is just making me feel more upset. Help keep the sub engaging. #don't downvote assholes. Do upvote interesting posts. Click here for our rules. https://www.reddit.com/r/amethysthole/about/rules and click here for our FAQ. https://www.reddit.com/r/amethysthole/wiki/fact#subreddit announcements. Follow the link above to learn more. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit. https://www.reddit.com/message/compose/?to=r/amethysthole. If you have any questions or concerns. Contest mode is 1.5 hours long on this post. I kind of disagree with some people here. I understand that the father is trying to help, but not asking the 22-year-old to get a job to help or move out, but forcing your 17-year-old to pay rent or move out is not fair. They should all be treated the same. The 22-year-old should not be coddled. The situation with the 22-year-old is his fault and he's trying to make an example out of the 17-year-old. I can understand if Op was a spoiled brat, but Op has been working for 2 years. The father could have at least allowed Op to save up for a year or two before moving out. So the father allows the 22-year-old to remain jobless, live rent-free, but the child that has been working for 2 years, got a scholarship and has been a good kid gets punished? You guys don't see it as punishment, but my friend went through the same situation and it was super rough for him. He was literally homeless on holidays. Thank God my parents allowed him to come stay with us. His family continued to coddle the 25-year-old son that has been living rent-free for years with no consequences. I agree with this. There's nothing wrong with pushing your kids to become independent, but you have to be consistent. It's unfair, and it's an easy way to brew resentment between your kids. Few things hurt sibling relationships more than skewed treatment. The ironic thing is it sounds like Op is already quite independent and responsible. So the dad is trying to teach a lesson that Op has already ingrained. Dad is trying to take credit. When Op continues to be independent and responsible, Dad can say, "See what I did?" If I'd given him a free ride, he'd be useless. That's exactly what happened with my parents. I looked my mom straight in the face and said, "You didn't have anything to do with it. You were busy with my sister. The Navy made me an adult. Not you." They weren't bad, just under-equipped to deal with my sister. They also paid for my college. Good on you. I have a friend who had a similar situation. She told her mom, "You didn't do anything to contribute. All you did was make it more difficult and stressful. You said you weren't going to be any help to me. And you certainly kept your word." Man, the fire marshal was busy at her place right then, I tell you what. Burn. Fire. Same. Or trying to use that money he's banking on to fund the 22-yeo's lifestyle because he can't afford it. Well, OP's father has already established his parenting flaws with 2 launch failures. Of course, his attempt to get it right will also be a catastrophe. Basically, the dad should have done the opposite of whatever his first instincts were. Laughing. That's it exactly. Dad should have made the older brother get a job or leave. Instead, he's being strict with the responsible one, while still enabling the irresponsible one. A magic 8-ball would have given better parenting advice. And alienate your one responsible son. 'Cause this is going to result in a huge amount of resentment between Op and his dad. This is where lifelong grudges get born. Changing the rules to essentially dump all of his parenting mistakes on his youngest son with a few weeks heads up. Meanwhile, he's allowing the unemployed son to get a free ride. And he let the oldest get a multi-year free ride. That's just cold. Up to his dad if he's willing to risk the relationship with the youngest over this. I think I'd not only be pissed off enough to leave, I'd leave without a goodbye and wouldn't bother saying where I'm going. Why? Oh, you want me out? If you, I'm out. No forwarding address. I'd also be ignoring calls and texts for a while. I have a real problem with overt or random unfairness. Sets me on the path to malicious compliance. Dad says he made mistakes with the first 2 sons, so he decides to make a worse one with Op. The best choice would be to draw the line where the eldest moved out. Y'all get kicked out at 23. Middle brother gets a year. Youngest gets the same time as the other brothers, and it's consistent. I don't necessarily find it to be so bad having kids live with their parents until mid-20s. But this way he'd at least treat them the same. That's a great idea. I hope Op sees this and brings it up to his father. It would be the fairest option. I do understand the father might have regrets and genuinely trying to help. But come on. It's so short-sighted. Treating Op like this won't just birth a lifelong grudge between Op and Dad, but also between Op and his siblings. Which is sad because I think most parents hope that their children will remain in touch with each other and be on good terms as they get older. NTA. The father is simply an a-hole. I hope Op goes and see with him or reminds him for the rest of the dad's life what a repulsive human being he is. Father fucked around and will find out when he needs full-time care, and failson number 1 and number 2, allergic to responsibility as always, are nowhere to be found. Similar thing on why I kind of resent my parents and would rather stay in a shelter if it came to that. This is the answer. 23 or done college in case it's after. Yes! Op mentioned a scholarship, which means he has plans for further education and not be some deadbeat like his brothers, so Dad could at least continue to offer him support with the proviso that he finishes his studies. This is the answer. Dad is creating rifts that may not be able to be mended, and he's not teaching the 22-year any responsibility. My 19-year-old pays me rent every month that I put in a savings account for him so that when he does move out, he'll have a nice nest egg. The goal is hopefully he'll be able to buy a home rather than rent one. This is similar to what my in-laws did for my hubby. He wasn't happy but was very surprised when he got all the money back. They had friends whose kids never moved out, so they didn't want staying home to seem a free ride. Absolutely the fairest option. Our kids knew they were welcome to stay at home until they have employment. They both actively looked after university. One is back in school to further their career, the other working. Rent where we live is astronomical. He's welcome to stay until he has savings. He cuts our grass, helps around the house. Beneficial for us too. Very responsible young adult. This is really stop on. Best possible solution. And older brother gets a lesson in responsibility that seems sorely needed. This is best solution. Did any of the kids go to college? You should get 4-year free pass for a room at home during summer since there is housing to pay for at school. This is a great idea. And Op might even opt to move out before turning 23 anyways. We don't know the situation for why the father is having one of his kids to pay rent while not asking the others, but I bet he has one. Asking for rent from an adult is completely acceptable. Exactly. 2 wrongs don't make a right. This is the best use of this saying I've ever seen. Thanks. Dad is a goddamn idiot. Exactly. This is exactly what I was thinking. Happy cake day, birthday cake. Happy cake day. This, he should push the other one instead. This would make me go LC once moved out. It might backfire, too. My in-laws refused to pay my husband's college tuition but paid for his younger brother. Fast forward 30 years and my mill wanted us to help her out. I refused. saying she needed to get the money from the kid she invested in. Good. That's exactly what she did. Invested in the idiot who isn't highly paid. If she can't ask paid for college kid for money. I'm very salty about these situations. Perfect. Karma is a biatch. I had to pay rent at 18. I don't think my younger 3 siblings did. But Dad was much better off financially by then. For example, he bought them their first car, $1,500 Oldsmobile, but still, I had to save up and buy my own. And that was after I attempted to buy a small motorcycle, overgrown moped to go back and forth to work at age 15. But when I rode with Mom into town and walked into the bank to get out $1,700, I had figured that it'd also be enough to cover my license, insurance, and a decent ticket and helmet. There wasn't enough in my account. I was confused because my little savings book said I'd had around $2,300. So I said, okay, then I'll just do $1,300. She said, there isn't that much. I said, how much is there? It was less than $200. There were 2 withdrawals the past couple months. I hadn't taken anything out in at least 6 months. Stunned, I walked out. When we got home, I called my cousin to say, hey, I can't buy your bike after all. I don't have as much money as I thought I did. Mom asked why I was upset, and I grudgingly told her. She broke down in tears. They'd been short on the house payment and taken it from the savings and were intending to put it back before I'd found out about it. Dad never mentioned it. That's been 25 plus years ago. I still don't trust him. They gave us a lot of cash when my daughter went through chemo to support us, and I still think it may be guilt, but I don't want to talk about it. My wife says I need therapy for that and other shit in my life, and I probably do. But I was pushed to be told I needed to pay rent after unknowingly making house payments. I don't think kid is the asshole here. Dad is. Dad needs to get the rent coming from the older before he starts enslaving the younger. I gave my parents 1/3 of my paycheck from the time I started officially working. I worked from like 9 on, but under the table. My brother was never required to do any of that. There was a lot of things unequal between him and I, sometimes in his favor, sometimes in mine. But we haven't spoken in 20 years. He stopped speaking to my parents in the 90s. So it seems Dad is building this relationship to fall apart. Apartments are expensive. Insurance is expensive. Food is expensive. College is expensive. You'd think this dad would want this kid to succeed in life instead of throwing arbitrary roadblocks to sabotage him and his future. Pushing the older kids to be more responsible seems like a good first step instead of whatever nonsense this is. If you leave, leave forever and never look back. Don't help them or support any of them. My mom took money out of my account to cover some bills as a teenager. But I didn't find out about it. She's the one who told me, and she put the money back. I said it was okay, but I never really forgot, and I never really forgave it, even though I said I did. I removed her from the account as soon as I was able. Yeah, she paid it back, but it bothers me that she never even thought to ask. Hell, I'd have said, yeah, sure. Just put it back later. Same here. I wouldn't have liked making the house payment. But if that was the only way, then that was the only way. But to take it and hope to put it back before I noticed. Dad was a preacher man, doing odd jobs and living on faith. He'd preach about not taking a salary and God providing. I mean, sure, but it sometimes feels like his faith cost me a motorcycle. Maybe a good thing. Maybe I'd have died young or something. Nowadays, when he and his nephews go off on their Harleys for a week out west, it's hard not to be bitter. Someday maybe I'll have a nice bike. Not a fat Harley, though. Probably like a BMW R1250 or a ratty old Honda or something. My mom just took the money I had in the bank and shrugged when I said something. As she put it, she needed the money to house and feed me. So I should just accept it. The money was from my great aunt. I went from thousands to I think 400. I knew the account existed, but I didn't touch it as a child. As my aunt told me when it was opened when I was about 3 or 4 and continued to tell me over the years, it was for my future. Turns out, shortly after I had about $5,000 in it, around the age of 8, she took it out to help buy the first house in Canada. She took money from both mine and my sister's accounts. My aunt replaced it and instead said that she would cover the down payment of the house. But whenever we returned, my mom would empty it out basically, and my aunt was getting elderly. She passed when I was 14, so no more money was going in. By the time I checked the account at 19, it was at most 400 Canadian, so 200 to 250-ish euro. Asking for the history was easy, and I saw how it had been filled, drained, etc. It sucked. It was money my great-aunt had set aside for me. I know my sister had an account from her as well, and I think she had done the same thing to hers. I know my mom used that money over the years of raising us to raise us. because we were always struggling financially here in Canada as compared to our lives in Germany. I would have liked to have that money to help me with funding my future, school, etc. If your mom is better off now, you might think about going to court and suing her for the money she stole from you. Nope, she's not better off. She makes what she can, but never made a lot. There is some hurt, but also, she was in a different country, across the ocean from all her support, trying to raise 2 girls alone. Our father at that time contributed nothing due to claiming student status back in Germany. My mom wasn't some horrible mother either. Now, as an adult, I imagine it must have been hard to take the money from her kids. Skeptical smiley face. I should add that I worked as a teenager as well, and that money went into an account in Canada, which my mom had access to and had taken money from at times. We were poor and she needed it to cover bills, mortgages, groceries. But since I never earned a lot as a kid, she could only take a couple hundred at a time. My grandma set up an ACCT for my daughter, and I refused to put my name on it for that reason. I could see if push came to shove and I absolutely needed to borrow the money, the temptation would be too great. When my daughter turns 18, she will have access if my grandmother passes. Exactly the same here. I hadn't moved my bank account from my parents' bank after I turned 18 because sometimes it was handy still having them on my account. Like when it was time to pay college tuition, they would transfer their share in and I'd write one check. But one time that I know about, when I was a junior in college, they needed several $1,000s very fast and just moved it out of my account without telling me. I went to write a check to pay for new tires for my car and the checks bounced because they thought they had a couple of weeks to put the money back. I was very upset. So after my next tuition payment, I changed banks and told them the next 3 payments were going to be separate checks. I haven't trusted them with money ever since. Wow, I worked from 14 to 16 saving up for my first car. My parents took about $1,300 from my account. When I went to finally buy my first car, they phrased it as helping me in a gift, because my grandfather paid me back and not them. They got angry when I would get excited and impatient to get it. It was such an unhealthy time and I felt betrayed. I was working 6-day work weeks at 15 for a whole year just to save up. I was getting the feeling that OP's dad needs the cash, and only the son that is working can supply it. I hope Op moves out, goes to college, someone mentioned scholarships, and lives his own life. Well, maybe, just maybe, the sons that caused the deficit should be the ones paying. Pouting. This is my thought as well. Yeah, I was the oldest, and I'm pretty sure I was the only one of 3 that paid rent. I also had to pay rent at 18, and I was fine with that. The problem arose when I got a good paying job and they upped my rent from $50 per week to $300 per week. I was only home to sleep, shower, and maybe dinner occasionally. Other than that, I was working. Still pisses me off to this day. When I graduated, my oldest sister had just given birth, so my parents went to visit. Both my parents had bread routes delivering to stores. My cousin came over to run my dad's route, and they would pay her for the 2 EKS. I was to run my mom's route. They told me I would get paid. Never saw a fucking dime. Parents can be real shitty at times. This is so wrong. My dad needed money to pay some bills. I said, okay, I have $3K. Did it help you? He paid me back later. All he needed to do was ask. Also, since I still live in my family home, in my culture, a woman leaves the family home when she marries. Part of my salary is to buy all the groceries. So my mom, dad passed away 7 months ago. Don't need to stress with feed us. That being said, I'm the youngest. The middle brother still lives here. Is unemployed, and don't help. He only does so. Me chores in the kitchen, but it's all. He spends all day playing games or watching videos. Of course I resent him. He could help our mom pay the bills. But the fact that mom don't ask him to do nothing, while I help dollar, makes me think about how unfair it is. My dad drained most of my and my siblings' college funds to buy a motorcycle he absolutely did not need. He already owned multiple cars and motorcycles that ran perfectly fine, and several that didn't. The icing on the shit sundae was he didn't even need our money and never paid it back. He was an engineer making 6 figures. It's been over 20 years and I still haven't forgiven him. I hope you all cut him off and hopefully y'all sue him for that. Good news is you get to have some revenge when it comes time for retirement homes. Dang, this was a roller coaster. You should probably talk about it with someone, though. Yeah, I talked to my Bill for a while about some of it. He's a good dude and that helped a lot. I need to find a therapist or something, though. I have younglings of my own now. I want them to have a better start in life. Also, I like your username. If Op's dad does decide to continue this course of action, he had better hope that either he doesn't need help when he gets older, or if he does, that his two oldest becomes more responsible, care to help, or are able to help, or if they haven't, that Op decides to help despite what's happened. I came here to say this exact thing. He's about to make the only responsible son not give a fuck about his dad needing help later in life. Because God knows, I doubt those older two will step up. So dad is alienating the responsible son and getting in cozy with the layabout. Which one does dad want looking after him in his old age and sorting out his assisted living facility? Dad's gonna be all sad Pikachu face when oldest kids can't be arsed and youngest kid says, "That sounds like a you problem." Sorry, it doesn't change how difficult my first adult years were, Dad. If I could do it at 18, you can be cut free at 80. Bye. Yeah, my mother was real bummed after years of scapegoating me when she needed help in her old age, and I told her to ask my older sibling. Greater than I think I'd not only be pissed off enough to leave, I'd leave without a goodbye and wouldn't bother saying where I'm going. You want me out? If you, I'm out. No forwarding address. I'd also be ignoring calls and texts for a while. Same man, since he said he isn't worried about this son, but he won't toss the 22-year-old out or help him get into an apartment. Crime me. This is exactly how I would handle the situation, but I would go fully NC instead of ignoring for a while. Right? Find a friend whose parents are reasonable humans, call an Uber at the stroke of midnight, leave a note saying, "Do not contact me or try to find me," and fucking disappear, but that's easy to say in my 40s. I hope you have a support system. You might even be surprised to learn who's ready to step up for you. Do not let your dad co-sign for an apartment or anything else that requires you rely on him if you end up having to move out. He sounds ready to hold that over your head. If what, or still in school, contact your guidance counselor for resources as someone old enough to be your mom. I wish you the very best of luck and offer you a big virtual hug if you want it. Keep us posted. Something similar happened to a friend of my sister. She was an only child, and I was a surrogate big brother for her. She was very sweet, but pretty naive about the real world since her parents were incredibly over-controlling. They told her a month before she turned 18 that they were going to kick her out of the house on her birthday. What was fucked up about it was they wouldn't let her get a job or have access to the small amount of savings she had accumulated growing up. They hit her with a bill for all of her clothes, assorted items she had, and even the furniture in her room, telling her she owed them back for it. As soon as I heard about it, I was pissed. I knew her dad fairly well. We both shared a passion for classic cars. He was a bit of an odd duck, but it was obvious who ran everything in that household. They didn't let her date or socialize with anyone after school. They trusted me around her because they knew I considered like a little sister. Her mom trusted and respected me since first was a Marine vet. I gave her the number to a friend of my mom who had recently got her law degree and just passed the bar. She discovered in our state, it is illegal to boot a kid out of the house, even if they are 18, if they're still in high school. She had 3 more months to go until then. Another one of her friend's family offered to take her in, no strings attached. She made an exit plan and, on her birthday, she moved out and didn't tell her parents beforehand. The lawyer made sure the police were present because of her mother. The cops told her she could take any of her belongings she wanted. Her mother went nuts, and the police forced her to sit in a chair in the backyard and not move under threat of arrest. Her mom, who was weird AF to begin with, got even worse. Her mom found out she got a PT job after school to earn some money. Mom tried to get her fired when she found out where she worked. She ended up having to get a retraining order against them. Then her parents got pissed when, surprise, she didn't invite them to her HS graduation. Her lawyer warned them if they showed up, they would be arrested. Mom showed up and was promptly arrested. My sister's friend ended up living with her new family for a few more years while she saved up money. Her and her friend moved out and got their own place when they had enough saved up. She went 100% no contact with her parents. When she got married, her new dad was the one who gave her away. She credited them with literally saving her life. I didn't look back for decades. It was a horrible struggle, but worth it. Same. Pack my important stuff and leave and never look back. You just know the dad is going to ask for financial help with the 22-year-old. We're family. We help one another. My mother took all of my sister's babysitting money over the course of several years, around $3,000, to keep it safe, and spent it all. And later, she took all of my sister's leftover student loan funds, after tuition was paid, and spent it on other things. My sister is still paying off the loans. My sister has been NC with my mom for about 3 years now. I'm surprised your sister is the only one NC. If my parents did that to my siblings, I'd never talk to them again. That's a somewhat simplistic viewpoint for what is a rather complex multi-decade and multi-generational mess that also involves significant, progressing mental health issues and cognitive decline. And countless incidents have occurred in which the police and laws have proven largely ineffective. She is also enabled by my other sister who is very much following in her footsteps. I try to stay away as much as possible, but also attempt to keep bare minimum guardrails on the situation so everything doesn't eventually blow up in all of our faces. My modicum of involvement is what keeps my youngest sister able to stay and see. Otherwise, my mom is the sort of person who would go to the ends of the earth to try to force her back, and there's a lot she can do and has done in the past that the law can't or won't do anything about. My sister thanks me for what I do so she can stay free. I'll be honest, your wording is a bit confusing, but essentially what you're saying is you'd like to stay away from your mom, but she'd harass your siblings so you do the bare minimum to keep her from doing that because there isn't anything else to do. Is that right? It's hard to explain the full situation without details. Also, I was anticipating other people being all, slap a restraining order on her, just move and don't tell her where you went. It's easy. When it's not like we haven't tried so many things. I had too much going on in my head. So I slipped into passive voice, disguise shit, speak. It's just too much when I try to explain it in a paragraph or two on Reddit. But yes, I avoid contact as much as possible and do the bare minimum to keep her from going nuclear on my sister who is in C. Our other sister is in full contact because she shares the issues my mom has, so she helps my mom track us when she feels like it. I'm sort of an early warning system for my sister who is in C. Also, walking that line keeps my mom out of my life more than if I went in C. If she gets little dribbles of information, sometimes untrue, just enough to keep her satisfied, her weird, obsessive stuff doesn't get set off. Setting this side of her off isn't good for me, and especially not for the NC sister. She's highly manipulative. She talks people into releasing info that's illegal for them to release. If you ignore her, she calls you repeatedly, finds your work and calls it, shows up at your house, shows up at your work, friends everybody you know on social media and milks those who don't know, believe for info, lies to get police to show up and try to take you in for 72-hour holds as punishment, and many other things that make you feel like you are crazy and make you sound paranoid to other people for suggesting she did them. She is charming. She is ruthless. She knows how to skirt legal lines. She knows that other people don't tend to believe anyone would do the things she does, especially to their kids, so she hides in plain sight. And when you belong to her forever. If you came out of her body, you are not an individual, you are a piece of her, which is even worse than belonging to her. I enlisted in the reserves to get away from my mother. She signed the paperwork a week before I turned 17. You could do that in the 80s. I don't know about now. A week after I turned 17, I had my first active duty weekend. That legally emancipated me. I moved out a week after that. I didn't tell my mother. She didn't know I was emancipated, or give her a forwarding address. She moved during the summer while I was in basic. I didn't know where she lived for years. We didn't miss each other. When I was that age, no one knew what malicious compliance was. But if you read my story, I got pissed and moved out when I was 17. But I told them where I would be. I can't remember much about phone calls though, so we probably didn't talk much. It hurts my heart to read all these stories. Pretty much. Then the dad comes to Reddit asking why his ungrateful youngest doesn't talk to him anymore, face with rolling eyes. Also, like, 18 is so young. We're not in the 50s anymore. You can't viably succeed in today's economy on your own fresh out anymore. It's an unfair expectation and a setup for failure emo. I left at 17 with $72 in my bank account. Very little help from family. I am 25 now and have barely stayed afloat this whole time. It's so unfair when parents expect a lot from a responsible child whilst they spoil the good-for-nothing siblings. When dad gets old, guess who he will expect to take care of him? He will demand OP's help since he is responsible, whilst the two brothers aren't expected to lift a finger. He will likely expect OP to help out his brothers too, as most parents like this do. He is setting himself up to be dumped by OP in a retirement home in his old age. Glad I'm not the only one to see this stupid toxicness. Now OP should milk dad for all he can, while he can. Cosign a lease? Okay, etc. Once graduated, that when you go and see. The reason why OP has been asked to pay rent might be for a reason OP refuses to acknowledge. Perhaps some of his own shortcomings. Maybe the dad has had trouble with him in the past, who knows? Then maybe by asking her to pay rent, maybe the father is going to give him the money back when he gets that first apartment or whatever. However, you don't know the actual reason, only what you're being told. Then this might be an opportunity for Op to move out and show his father that he's 10 times better than the lazy 22-year-old son. Again, we actually don't know the whole story here. Op, I'd move out with a good attitude, show your dad that you're much better than your lazy brother, and move on with your life and don't hold a grudge. Yes, and lifelong resentment toward his siblings. I know not everyone agrees, but 18 is young, and truly supportive parents don't set deadlines on very young people. Real support leads to independence. It's a path, not an ultimatum. I'm not talking about a 30-year kid. Exactly. Not that I agree with it, but if you're going to be the parent that kicks your kid out at 18, then you need to set that expectation back when they're 15, 16. Not wait till 2 weeks before and drop it on them. Yep. When I went to college, I was on a full ride scholarship. Worked PT jobs and internships, wanted to buy a car. Parents wouldn't help, so I paid for it in full from the money I'd made working, which $14 grand to a college student was a backbreaking amount of money. Thank God I bought a reliable car, because I'm still using the same car to this day, 13 years later. I think my parents handled all of the above the way it should have been handled, though. It taught me how to be responsible with my money, not live outside my means, and understand that I had to be able to provide for myself. I have a brother 3 years younger than me. Went to the same college I did, but no scholarship, so was paid for in full by my parents. Never worked any job. He was the last child, so my parents felt they could splurge since they didn't have any children eating into their budget anymore, aside from his tuition room. They had bought a brand new Toyota Highlander the year before, but decided they didn't like it, so they gifted it to my brother since he didn't have a car. It was easily worth $35,000. He drove it for a few years, then sold it and used the money to buy a better car. It sucks because my brother is also a good kid and wasn't a brat about it or anything, but it made me foster so much resentment towards him and my parents because of it. It just felt like my parents thought I would be able to make it on my own, so they gave me a harder path to travel because I could handle it. Definitely still have a very strained relationship with them. Exactly. My grandma raised my 2 male cousins, and when she passed away, my dad got custody of them. It was after my parents split up, and the way he treated my cousins was vastly different from the way he treated me. I was given more rules and responsibilities and punished for everything, even things my cousins did that I had no part in. Meanwhile, they could do what they wanted and trash the house without ever helping. Because I was the daughter and should know better, despite my one cousin being 2 years older than me. This December, I will celebrate 3 years of no contact with my dad and stepmom. Not to mention resentment between the 22Y, though, and the op. Well, good luck to the dad when he and his wife need help later on in their lives from their 2 unreliable children, and Op should just tell them that he already helped them out when they forced him to pay rent at 18. Parents made their bed if they actually enforce this. Hope Op's dad likes state-run nursing homes. You make a great point about alienating the responsible son. When dad is old and needs someone to take care of him, does he think his irresponsible sons will pitch in and help? He might want to consider this before he ruins his relationship with Op, who seems like a very responsible, hard-working person. At least Op won't have to feel bad not supporting dad and brother later in life. Fuck them. They can manage themselves. Yeah, I was really torn on how to respond to this one because as the responsible kid in my family, ultimately I have to acknowledge that I am better off and farther along in life because my parents did not continue to support me or coddle me past a certain age the way they did with my siblings. But at the same time, this has left me to deal with a hell of a lot of resentment for both my parents and my siblings, because it's so apparent that I was treated differently, and at this point it seems my parents have given up and will just coddle my siblings until they die. And that has given me a lot of fear that it will then become my problem to deal with. So, I am glad that I have my life and not my siblings' lives. But how I got there really damaged my relationships with my entire family. It's very complicated. I don't think his dad is trying to be an asshole, and he might ultimately be better off having gotten this push. But I do think his relationship with his family will suffer for it. This, a perfect setup for a completely ruined relationship. But youngest son will be a better adult, an actual adult. Maybe dad thinks it's worth the loss of communication. He should let his dad read all the comments. He might want to think about which of his kids is going to take responsibility for him when he's older and treat them accordingly. I feel this very personally. Super smart way to push away the only child that is likely to visit them in old age for reasons other than asking for money. I'm assuming Op is gay or just more effeminate than his sperm donor. I'm not going to call him a father. Would like. Or, and maybe this is crazy, theorizing about that without evidence is dumb and the dad could just be unfair. Making it harder for them to afford moving out seems rather counterintuitive. 100% this. The world has changed, and there aren't many opportunities for 18-year-olds to move out and make a living wage. I strongly believe that parents should consider continuing to financially support their young adult children as long as it's not a huge financial burden to the household, not being taken advantage of, the kid is making some form of movement towards a long-term independence, e.g. college, career training, saving up to move out, paying down student loans, is charging up our aunt going to force them to work a minimum wage job full-time instead of going to school, setting them up for a lifetime of lower wages? I'd even be okay with a 22-year-old staying at home with little to no rent, as long as there was a savings and move-out plan. Not pushing, but bringing up, even if adult family should support and help. Never understood parents who want to do this. I'd say if she's still in HS, then this is wrong. That is my thought. If he is just about to turn 18, he either skipped a grade or is in high school and turning 18, like others in grade 12. That makes it unfair. What is worse, he has an older son who doesn't have to be accountable as an adult in his early 20s. I can't imagine being in high school and having to move out on your own. Hoping something comes out in your favor, Op. I am sorry your father is putting this pressure on you as your last few months of school. Adding in the cost of university, college, or whatever, depending if that is taken care of. Hugs to you. I graduated HS at 17, turned 18 my freshman year of college. All about your birth date and when you start school. Didn't skip a grade. An April birthday wouldn't be likely to lead to that outcome though, but I guess it depends on where they are. Oh, agree. His is unlikely. Just saying it's possible to have a wider range than everyone graduates at 18. Or how quickly you can cram extra credits in as fast as possible. I graduated a year earlier than everyone else because from the moment I entered high school I focused on nothing but studies and accumulating the necessary credits. Helped I was on an IEP too though. Same here. This is way less common now, in the US anyway, than it was 25 plus years ago. For the last 20 years or so, things have moved to having a cutoff for turning 5 and starting school. When I was a kid, if you turned 5 before October, you could start kindergarten at 4. Then it was you had to turn 5 by September 1st. Then by the first day of school. Now in the district I grew up in, you have to be 5 by July 31st to start kindergarten in mid-August. And frequently, with boys especially, they encourage some birthday kids to wait until the next year to start kindergarten, so they've just turned 6 instead of barely 5. Some schools start kids earlier too. My older sister started first grade at 4 yo. Yeah, that was me. Smiley face. His birthday is in April. He is most likely still a senior. Same. When my mom tried to register me for elementary school, then said I was born a day too late for that year, and had to wait a year. Had I have gotten in that year, I would have graduated at 16. In our area, our age cutoff is August 1st. Our youngest started on time and will turn 6 the last day of kindergarten, which means he'll turn 18 basically as he graduates high school. No skipping grades involved, just a birthday that falls on an unfortunate part of the year. We're actually considering holding him back over it, because he is having a hard time academically and might not have been mature enough to start school yet. Have your baby making sex in the winter, people. Better to have your kid be the oldest kid in a grade than the youngest. Go with your gut instinct and hold him back if you feel it's necessary. I have a sister whose birthday falls on 30th of June, and she started school September that year at 4 years old. She was the youngest child and struggled and did not cope well and got a helper in primary 3. She never managed to catch up and spent her entire high school years in the special needs class and ended up with no qualifications. Oppa's male 17 yo turns 18 in a couple of weeks, which means still in HS unless he skipped a grade. My son will be 17 when he graduates and didn't skip a grade. Some kids are born at just the right time to graduate early. The age cutoffs are in the fall in the US. They usually won't start a kid at age 4 unless they're super close to the cutoff date. We know that Op was born in the spring, though, so in most school districts, he should currently be a high school senior unless he skipped a grade. The late spring birthdays tend to be the youngest kids too. My June birthday meant I graduated at 17, because graduation was in May. My brother was also 17, turning 18 a few days after graduation. Edit to clarify, I'm in the U.S., where most schools run August, Sept to May, June, and schooling, kindergarten, generally starts at age 5. It's dependent per individual. I graduated high school at 16 in the UK cause my birthday is in November. Another pupil who skipped a year and was 15 in June wasn't allowed to graduate and moved to higher education in another school. She was forced to stay at the same school for another year, but they allowed her to take lower sixth-year courses instead as she'd already gotten her GCSEs. High school in the U.S. is completely different than in the UK. Not sure where OP is, but in the U.S., you typically have to be 5 to start kindergarten and school starts in August. So fall birthday kids are almost 6 when they start. You used to be able to start if you would turn 5 by October, but not anymore. And our school year ends in late May typically. We start with kindergarten, then have grades 1 to 12. So most kids turn 18 during their final year or during the summer after. Unless you skip AG. Grade. No one graduates younger than 17. The vast majority are 18. So agree with the above two comments. Unfortunately, rather than becoming wiser, your father has become, indeed, dumber. Frankly, I'd go as far as to deem him stupid. For years he has rewarded your 2 older, irresponsible siblings with free rent, living arrangements well into their 20s. You, a not yet adult at 17, already have a semblance of employment and have secured a scholarship for college attendance. Given the above, your father has decided to teach you responsibility? Does someone have emblazoned on their forehead? Perhaps you can demonstrate to your father that you're the only male in the family that has a scintilla of common sense. Here's what you propose occur. 1. 22-year-old brother is instructed that he has a 90-day grace period to secure employment and either start paying rent, or he can move out and locate alternative housing. 2. While you're attending college, you shall not pay rent, at least until age 22. Upon your graduation, you're to have a 90 to 180-day grace period to similarly secure employment and pay rent, or you can move out and locate alternative housing. You may retain any earnings during this juncture for your college expenses, personal hygiene, etc. 3. When presenting the above, draw his attention to the fairness he will have accorded each sibling. Further point out that if it's responsibility he's attempting to demonstrate, focus his efforts on those who require it, i.e. your 2 older brothers. Ask him how you've been responsible that he needs to focus his attention on you. Frankly, I think the just wants to make a buck on you. 4. In the event he is still insistent on his abhorrent proposal, to the best of your ability, move out on your own, without him on your lease. Give him a tacit foo by going no contact with non-disclosure of your location, life, etc. I've read many posts on Reddit. I find your father to be preposterous. You obviously have your mother's brains. Good luck. Please keep us apprised. It's also a way of encouraging the behavior the 2 older siblings are exhibiting. You mean, if I behave like them, I can pay free living expenses? This happened with my parents. My dad charged my big sister rent. When she turned 18, IDK how much it was, but she had to work extra hours and didn't have much fun money. He did it to control her more since she was rebellious and had gotten into some serious trouble before. My mom couldn't stop him because she was the stepmom to my big sister, and my dad was saving all the rent up to give her when she moved out, but he never told her that the money he gave her then was her own rent, so it defeated the purpose and left her resentful of him, and they ended their relationship a bit more, so now it just left the resentment she feels for me because my mom has taken care of me so much and didn't let my dad do the same with me. As a parent now of kids who are a decade and a half younger than OP's situation, I have kind of a different take on this. I can see my 2 kids have very different levels of ability academically and in life. One is ADHD and struggling in school and with executive function at home, while the other is neurotypical, an extremely hard worker, and gets nearly perfect grades. Knowing the difference between the kids and anticipating where they might end up around their 18th birthdays, is it fair to tray at them both identically? I don't think so. It's an equality question versus an equity one. I know the ADHD one is going to need more help, so I will probably end up giving him more, while the NT one is probably going to be on a college track all on his own regardless of how I parent him. I don't necessarily think charging op rent because he's the responsible kid is the answer either, but demanding identical treatment when some of your kids need more help and guidance isn't either. It would be silly to consistently do something you now know is a worse option out of fairness. I don't agree with paying rent right when someone turns 18. But the parents also don't have to let ops stay at home unemployed, contributing nothing financially just because of fairness. Life isn't fair. Each young adult is different. The dad isn't asking the unemployment 22 why to pay rent because he's unemployment. It doesn't say he won't have to pay once he gets a job. There's also tons of missing info too, like why the others aren't working. Maybe students or disabilities, addiction, etc. Who says you have to be consistent? Fuck that. Each child is different and at times need to be raised differently. We are only hearing the side of an obvious 17-year-old child who would rather cry to family than be a fucking adult. Dad is being a dick, but it is his right to be dick. It's his house, and if the child doesn't like it, go somewhere where you think life will be fair. That applies to small things for sure, but not for large ones, especially if they are financially. Not charging the 22-year-old for rent but then ask for it from the youngest is simply wrong and has nothing to do with different kids need different help greater than dad is being a dick, but it is his right to be dick. It's his house, and if the child doesn't like it, go somewhere where you think life will be fair. Yes, but dad also has to live with the consequences. He then has no right to whine if his son cuts him out of his life for being a dick. And he has no right to go cry how unfair it is when the son refuses to help him when he's old. That's how life goes. If you want a good relationship to your kids once they're independent, then you better don't be a dick while they still depend on you. Op sounds more mature than most adults here. And how many adults are crying how unfair it is that their kids never call or visit? That they aren't allowed to see their grandchildren? And of course they pretend it isn't their fault. But that's exactly the consequences of their own actions when they were Oz to their kids. Life isn't fair and your kids owe you nothing, especially if you treat them badly. Let me start out by saying I don't agree with the dad here. But even if it was fair, you talked about stuff like this way earlier. Not tell them barely a month before they turn 18. Oh, by the way, time to pay rent or move. I had this talk with my two oldest from they were 15. That when they turn 18, I don't expect rent. I'd rather they put a small amount of money they earn into an account and save those money for when they move out. And I expect they pay for some stuff themselves. Oh, of course, but eat food, etc. The grocery bill does not go up just because they turn 18. As long as they focus on school, which is the only condition. So they have known since 15 what the expectations are. There are no surprises. They are both very happy with the agreement. Both has after-school jobs and was relaxed about searching for jobs, etc. How is Op supposed to find a job in less than a month? Run around to every single place and cross fingers they get lucky? That is so far from fair, and Dad dropped the ball there heavily with the reasonings he's using. I think he has a job from the way he was writing about being responsible and his brother not getting kicked out because he's unemployed. It still doesn't make sense because he's in school and can't work enough to pay rent and buy his own groceries at home plus save to move out. And no way he has enough money saved to pay deposits and first month rent plus utility deposits. Or can find a roommate so quickly. English isn't my first language, so thank you for pointing out that possibility. I assumed responsible, as I do my homework. I don't miss school, get good grades, and don't cause trouble. My original point of my comment still stands, though. It should have been discussed way before a month before turning 18. Because you were right, even if Op already has a job, there's school, paying rent, etc. is a huge expectation and responsibility to just throw at someone. Yes, this shouldn't have been just sprung on him less than a month before his 18th birthday. He should have known about this at least 6 months ago to be able to plan and save. He might have been able to get into the dorms at college and figured out a way to pay for it even. My mom made it clear that so long as we were in school and focused on our studies, she would provide for us so we could do well. After that, we had a 6-month grace period to get a job and get out or start paying rent. It worked well. We were supported during university and were set up for success. I'll always be grateful for how she supported us. I love how your mom set things up. Mine has a grace period, too, of a sort, if they couldn't land an after-school job. They have. And they are not 18 just yet. What I expect they pay for themselves is mostly fun stuff, snacks. If there's shoes more expensive than what I buy, then save up. Slowly along the way, the phone will be transferred to their own name when they can pay for it. Stuff like that. I provide food, clothing, basics, soaps, etc. And will pay gym memberships. I know some will. I won't say that's a luxury, but I like that they found something where they are working on themselves and are active, which I won't make them pay before they have a real full-time job. Youth jobs don't pay big bucks. So, to me, It would be unfair to say, congratulations on the 18. Here's the bills. My mom encouraged us to work in high school, but didn't force us. We mostly worked summer jobs, except my younger brother, who has been in the restaurant industry since he was 16, now is 27 and in his PhD and also bartending. I had a great babysitting gig that paid really well and was able to save up a lot with that. I used that as my fun money, but for big things, my mom would help me out. I went on 2 school trips to Europe with the agreement that I'd pay half and save my own spending money, and my mom would cover the other half. But she didn't expect us to really provide or pay rent or anything until we were done school, so we could really focus on our studies, and now we're all successful. I definitely credit my mom for a large portion of all our success. You did the right thing, and I agree it is impossible for someone just turning 18 to find a job in less than a month, let alone a home to rent. I agree. I live in a decent-sized town, and I know grocery stores, etc., at least here. They have so many young people applying. It's been like that since I was a teen. Landing even a basic few hours a week job is hard because the pile of people applying is just so huge. And being desperate for a job because you have a time limit is also a sure way to just say yes to the first offer you get and get taken advantage of at the workplace because you just need the money here and now. It gets hard. Or to say, no, I can't pick up that extra shift. Not to be that person, but some of the people hiring, they can sniff out the desperation like a bloodhound. As a parent, I would hate myself to put my child in a position like that. I also live in an area with a lot of those minimum wage, entry-level jobs, and it is still almost impossible to actually get one. I remember last time my parental figures told me I had to have a job within the next month. I barely made it, and that was only because my boyfriend at the time did me a solid. That whole month I was stressed out of my mind, absolutely terrified of what the consequences would be if I didn't manage it in time. And that was in a vastly better job economy. It's only gotten worse since. I cannot imagine putting a teenager under that amount of stress, let alone if it was my teenager who I'd raised. My 23-year-old applies every day to multiple places. Nowhere's hiring for even minimum wage here. Op has been working for 2 years already. Then it's even more unfair and not done right to wait until the last moment to spring something like this on Op. No argument here. I'm told my grandparents, who had 9 kids, made them pay rent if they still lived at home after graduating HS. But they kept it in a secret account and gave it back to them as a lump sum when they moved out. I assume they made sure the older ones didn't tell the younger ones. I don't know where Op lives, but housing costs right now are fucked up. Putting in enough hours to make enough to afford housing and food and transportation, while still having enough time to put into school and education, that's hard. If the dad didn't put his foot down for the other kids, he shouldn't make it needlessly hard for this one. I think it might actually be illegal to make your child pay rent if they're still in high school, even if they are 18. If not illegal, then it is the dick move of all dick moves. Yeah, if Op is well-behaved enough that his moving out is a possibility when for his older brother it's not, that's a sign that he's already doing well. In the current environment, someone like that should be allowed to live at home and save up a deposit to buy, conditional on their actually doing that. Older brother, on the other hand, is being enabled. Every day he's not doing employed work, he should be getting worked in the house. Cooking, cleaning, shopping, landscaping, until he realizes he's better off getting a job and a life. Even if it's make work, it will get him moving. I wouldn't say the dad needs to treat them the same, but kicking your kid out the moment they turn 18 after coddling the eldest 2 is definitely not the answer. There are hundreds of ways to teach the value of money, earning your keep, budgeting ECT without pushing your kid out the nest prematurely. I think dad's overcorrecting here, and he's setting up Op to pay the price. I can't help but wonder if he's trying to set her up to house the brothers. Has Op been taught about budgeting? Interest? Does he know how much he'll need for first and last month's rent and deposit for an apartment? How to go about getting utilities hooked up if the apartment doesn't include that? I'm guessing OP's dad has no clue how much an adequate apartment in their area will cost, and if I was Op, I wouldn't count on him co-signing either. I have a suspicion that OP's dad is aware and will alternatively charge him cheap rent that will help pay household bills that he actually needs help with it, and then making it hard for Op to move out later. Especially in today's economy. Greater than I kind of disagree with some people here. I understand that the father is trying to help, But not asking the 22-year-old to get a job to help or move out, but forcing your 17-year-old to pay rent or move out is not fair. That is rage-inducing insanity that people would defend that. It's fucked up on many levels, and this poor kid will never forget how his family has treated him at arguably the most important age of his life. I totally agree with you. This happened in my family. My mom was forced to work and provide, while my grandparents cradled my uncle. He was mostly jobless, but was able to finish trade school to be a welder. Mom moved to Greece to make money and help grandparents raise me since I was 6. Now I'm 31. My uncle passed away about 10 years ago at the ripe age of 32. He was a jobless alcoholic that would sell copper wires and anything that was laying around. And still to this day, Grandma believed he was her precious boy and did nothing wrong. And Grandma still to this day can give two shits about me and Mom. We bought her in different countries, and she's alone in our home country. Punishing one kid because they enabled another is not going to solve any problems. Op is a great kid and will go far. If your father will not listen to a reason, maybe being on your own will not be that bad down the line. It will suck, yes, but take it as a valuable lesson in life. People here gave great advic. Your uncle was only 11 years older than you. Not the person you responded to, but one of my good friends and her 3 uncles were all in HS together at the same time. It's possible. I have a 15-year age gap between me and my oldest sister. If she had had kids young instead of in her 30s, we would have been very close in age with me being their aunt. There are people out there who are older than their uncles or aunts. So not impossible, just a bit unusual. I have a good friend who has a niece who is older than him. His brother was 25 years older than he was. Yep, and Mom had me young too, at 18 young. So at first we were growing up like siblings with him. Then the older he got, the worse his behavior turned. I agree with you completely. I agree. You wrote that perfectly. What happened to the middle ground of continue your education, whether it be college or trades, or get a job where the dad would take rent? That would essentially be a savings account for the kid to give them a jump start when they do move out. This isn't an issue of the dad needing the extra income to keep the lights on, and if he's going to college, that takes a lot of time and effort to succeed. It's unfair that his brother has gotten to coast for 4 years, and he doesn't even get a year. I'm sorry that happened to your friend. Why make things so hard on your already well-behaved kid? The world is going to beat them up enough. Same here, the youngster gets all rules and has to follow them is just bad parenting. Equality is the way. The father is not trying to help. I would show this post to your dad, OP. And TA. I agree. This is unfair. This is just going to ignite tension between siblings. The biggest issue is that OP's dad doesn't understand the problem doesn't start at 18 and that the sons who would have benefited from such an ultimatum are the ones he isn't giving it to. OP's character will not benefit from the ultimatum because he doesn't need the lesson taught to him. He has already integrated personal responsibility. Dad wants a tenant. Then he will be treated as a landlord with the expectations of one. OP can then save up enough money and get the hell out of Dodge. I'd even get a lease written up that Dad can't tell OP what to do. He's dealing with an adult tenant that has renter's rights, not his kid's son. Thing is too, War State 2251. If you are in the U.S., most states require parents to pay for what the kid needs, even after 18, while still enrolled high school. There are protections as long as you are finishing out the school year. I know that's not a lot of hope, but let him know if he kicks you out while still in high school, you'll sue for child support. Then I'd follow through if he does kick you out. You prove you're not like your brothers by standing up for your rights. Law. I actually think this is unfair on the brothers as well. They may be adults now, but Dad using their brother to fix a mistake he feels he made with them suggests he's written them off and sees OP as his chance to do over raising them. Far better to help the older brothers in life by equipping them with some skills instead of continuing to enable their dependency, at least the one who still lives there. Not saying he shouldn't charge OP rent, but doing so while allowing the older brother, who unlike OP presumably has had time to get settled into a full-time job, seems incredibly unfair on them both, albeit for very different reasons. Yep, nothing to add here. You were right. It isn't fair. Life isn't fair. They should be treated equally. Dad's going too far in the other direction. I get if he felt he made a mistake with the older boys, but 18, not out of high school, is too young to pay rent. He should do chores, go to college, get a job, then over time ratchet up the pressure. But not on some arbitrary day when one happens to turn 18. Wait, he has to pay rent while he's going to school? It seems to me he should get a pass on rent. Did his brothers go to college? There definitely is nothing more damaging than unfair treatment. My parents have always pushed more responsibility onto me, and when I was younger, I hated literally everyone because of that. I still can't shake a bit of the resentment towards my parents since it still happens, but I've gotten over it with my siblings since I do love them and most of them are younger than me. I have a friend who's in this exact situation. Her older brother lives in the basement, rent-free, jobless, college dropout, but they charge her rent and make her pay for all the utilities, not just her share, the entire bill. I can tell you now that she really, and rightfully, dislikes her brother. If the father really wanted to correct his mistakes, can he work on helping the 22-year-old find his footing instead? NTA. Removed. Your comment has been removed because it violates Rule 1. Be civil. https://www.reddit.com/r/amethyshole/about/rules/closing parenthesis. Further incidents may result in a ban. Why do I have to be civil in the sub about assholes? https://www.reddit.com/r/amethyshole/wiki/fact ***. Message the mods. https://www.reddit.com/message/compose?*2=r/amethyshole ***. If you have any questions or concerns, you should probably edit your comment to include NTA, because it's the top one by far. But the algorithm won't count it at all without a judgment. Definitely agree with this. If he had the same terms for all three, that would be one thing. But, unless the 22-year-old is actually unable to live on his own, Dad isn't helping him by letting him get away with everything. Totally agree with you. This happened to my sister, and my parents helped my older sister a lot. Helped her with buying cars, gave her money whenever for trips and events, and gave her money for school. For Christmas, she got a new stereo for her car, and I got a DVD and a CD. They never did the same for me. They never gave me a dime in tuition or money to go on trips or literally any help. I went limited contact with my parents after I moved out. They continued to help my older sister W. I did money well into her late 20s. I asked them one day why they always helped my sister and never helped me, and they said, well, because you never acted like you needed it. I honestly was never offered help, so I didn't think I could ask. Went totally no contact with them after that. My sister didn't believe we got treated differently until about a year ago, where it finally dawned on her how differently we had been treated. She just moved from our hometown for the first time, and she is hones. Feel what pretty emotionally and maturity stunted because of how my parents coddled her. I am honestly kind of glad my parents didn't do that with me, but I won't lie and tell you it doesn't still hurt that I was forced to be overly independent at 13 while she was shielded up until she was almost 30. I have kids, and I would never buy them luggage for their 18th birthday, as they say. But there is definitely a spectrum of responses as kids get older. If you have one that is just laying around all day being a bum, I'd encourage them to get a job and get out in the world. But if I had a kid that was going hard on their education, doing worthwhile things with their time, perhaps taking sports very seriously, volunteering their time to help others, things of that nature, then I would be supportive financially. I 100% agree. My stepbrother and I are the same age. He was in and out of detention centers as a child, and now he's in and out of jail as an adult. He's never had a job, and was constantly stealing from my dad and my stepmom. All three of them often argued and called the police on each other. I was the shy, quiet, well-behaved one. When I started working, they wanted me to pay rent. I refused. I already paid for my own food, my phone, my car insurance, and everything else of my own, except for the house and electric. They didn't ask him to get a job. They let him sit around the house, talking on the phone all day, eating all their food, and took him shopping for clothes, or whatever else he wanted. They were enabling him, and it wasn't fair. I would have absolutely paid rent if they held him to the same standards. I moved out as soon as I could and got an apartment. I no longer speak to my brother, but I do speak to my parents, and he's still doing the same thing. We're in our 30s now. It's not fair to only hold the good one accountable while still allowing the bad one to continue to do nothing. He will never change. He's not doing the 22-year-old one favors by continuing to coddle him. It's okay to realize that he made mistakes with the older kids and doesn't want to repeat them with the youngest. But that sentiment is lost if he continues to make the same mistake with the middle brother. He's 22. He's not a lost cause. Dad shouldn't just give up and decide that he never needs to be responsible for himself because he wasn't ready at 18. This dude is definitely a shit-tier parent. He raised two losers and is overcompensating way too hard on the third one. Total skill issue on the dad's part. Also, nowadays, I'd argue it's a bit unreasonable to expect a child to move out as soon as they graduate. The growing wealth gap makes the financial burden a lot more difficult than it was when our parents or past generations graduated. I had a similar situation to my brother, almost 30, was coddled. He had no chores. My lil sis had one while I did literally everything else plus helped with the cars and shit. He couldn't keep a job longer than a year and my dad covered all his expenses despite being unable to cover his own. I was also the good kid getting punished for everyone else's bullshit. It really isn't fair, especially when I was the only one keeping the house clean and the pets cared for. Sure, my sister had straight as B. Everyone knew she was a lying little thief. I got my first job at 24, disabled, but DRS refused to admit it since I'm female and look healthy. I don't doubt that my dad would have expected me to help coddle that loser had he not died. Dad, not brother, before I got my first check. I moved out by the end of the year and have never been happier. NTA at all, but let you father know that as the responsible sibling, when he hits retirement and needs a caretaker, to not darken your doorstep looking to live with you, that is what will happen. I'm sorry this is happening to you, but you will become stronger from it and just know that karma is right around the corner for your dad, waiting for him.